recap edition. I don't really know where to start because I'm kind of super excited, but we'll shelve some of that. It was a very big week. Only one team in the division won this week. That that was the Baltimore Ravens. But some impactful things are happening in the playoff picture and in the division race. Even though the ultimate race is all but decided in the division. But we will get to all that first. We'll do a beverage check. Chad, what are you drinking tonight, buddy? Well, tonight, my friend, in honor of the budding relationship between the city of Cleveland and the king of beers, I'm drinking Anheuser-Busch's second finest beverage. However, the most superior drinkability that they provide in a beverage. That's a Bud Light. That's right. You could drink more. That's drink more beers. I'm sure Stone Cold Steve Austin thinks so. Facts. Yeah, let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah. The uniforms were the boring regular uniforms. Nothing special there. This was definitely like the most AJ Green game. Oh, Dean says he can't hear you. Go ahead, try to talk. Oh boy. I don't know. Try to talk. I know.
Forever.
All right, now go.
I'm back talking about the Bengals.
How about
Silence
it,
might.
Dean?
Am I here? Am I here, Dean? Do I exist? Am I a person? Or am I just a figment of my own imagination?
He also called you Captain 5 Points.
I love that
He
nickname.
said,
Thank you.
"Can't hear Captain 5 Points." All right, you're back.
Love it. If you missed anything, the Bengals lost 30-7. How are we going to do this? Am I going to have to do crazy editing?
No, we'll just leave it in,
Yuck. Okay. So
unless you want to do crazy editing. That's up to
I'll
you.
decide tomorrow morning. We'll see when Esme wakes up. Um, yeah, AJ Green, one nice drive. The Bengals stink. It's just, it's such a shame.
Yeah, like they even moved the ball like pretty up. Dallas's defense is not good, and their line is good, and so they were giving up a lot of pressure. In fact, Brandon Allen didn't finish the game, but like guys were getting off. Like Tyler Boyd was getting him some, and like AJ Green had probably his best game this year. Um, yeah, they're not good. And when you talked about them being unwatchable, and when your defense stinks and you don't have competent quarterback play, which is what they lost when Burrow went out for the season, like that's just what you get. And it was a
Yeah,
stinky game.
I guess the only other stuff I have to add besides the big fumbles and it's like unusual. That's the beauty of the Bengals. They do this in new ways. Like Giovanni Bernard hadn't fumbled in over 800 snaps. I mean, what are we even talking about here? I don't even know how many years it takes to get to that.
Yeah,
Um, so they were down like 20-7, and Brandon Allen just like threw the ball away on a fourth and goal. It's like,
yeah.
dude, just like throw it bounds. Like you don't care if it's intercepted at that point. Like it's fourth down. Like you're down by 2 scores. Like you got to throw it so someone can catch it. And I'm not like mad at him. He's a backup and stuff. It's just like that's where they are and what they do, and it just is lame. We did talk in the preview that if you were going to put yourself through this game, you should probably be focused on Jesse Bates. And he did have another highlight play, although not where I would have expected it. Jesse Bates is on the kickoff coverage team, and he saved a touchdown by chasing down a kick
That was the
return.
second half kickoff.
Yeah, I was like, and this is the second week in a row that I've been very surprised to see a Bengals starter on it. Last week, Carl Lawson got called for a penalty on a punt coverage. So Carl Lawson, their only good pass rusher at all, apparently covers punts. Um, Misallocation of valuable resources. Who am I to say? But
Check.
Jesse Bates saved a touchdown, so that's the Jesse Bates check-in of the week. Could be an all AFC North special teams representative when it's all said and done. We'll see.
Jesse Beats is like if Dwight Schrute and Jesse Bates had like a test tube baby together. Jesse
Yeah,
Beats.
I was thinking more like a Kanye situation, dropping beats.
There you go.
I don't know. Yeah, Bengals stink. They're gonna get a top 3 pick. Penny Sewell. Start saying that a lot. He's an offensive lineman from Oregon and perfect bust candidate. Not even didn't even play this year. Opted out. So 20 years old, already skipping seasons. So could be the
Him and
next
AJ Green, the super Spider-Man meme.
dude. And I mean, if you think about the Bengals and their recent history of offensive line draft picks, like you got to have a bad feeling already about that. It's like, just nervous. All right, I don't want to talk about the Bengals anymore. I don't really
No.
want to talk about the next game either.
Yep. So the next game that happened was on Sunday Night Football. In I think it's in Orchard Park, New York, home of the Bills Mafia, the Buffalo Bills, and this was kind of a weird game. After the first quarter, it was 0-0. Neither team was really sustaining much for different reasons. Josh Allen threw two interceptions in like the first quarter and a half, and yeah, Roddy said Eric Ebron's favorite quarterback, Josh Allen. um, and really, the story of the whole night for the Steelers was just they were unable to sustain drives consistently. And a lot of it was exacerbated by drops. And the writing's kind of been on the wall for a couple weeks now with this, and we've just seen it become an issue the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, Mike Tomlin got pretty upset the last 2 weeks with his team's play, and talking about the drops, he said, if you can't catch the ball, we'll find someone that can. And Deontay Johnson had 2 drops in their first 2 drives, giving him a total of, I think, like 8 over his last 2 or 3 games. And they benched him. If you didn't notice Deontay Johnson for most of the first half and maybe into the third quarter, it's because he was on the bench. It's just too much. Like, it's just too much. One of the drops was a third down. It was going to be a conversion. You've probably said it best over the last couple weeks. The Steelers' margin for error playing this type of game is very low, so they just can't afford it. But they keep having to pay it, you know?
Yeah.
Ironically, and I don't know if you'll agree with me on this because the Steelers lost by 11, and most of the headlines basically said that the Bills dominated them, particularly in the second half. But I feel like this game was like a eminently winnable game for the Steelers, even not playing that great again. They were up 7-3, and actually they're up 7-0, basically going towards the end of the first half. And that's when the Bills finally got Stephon Diggs going. He had like 3 big catches on a drive that got them their first field goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Steelers were driving with like 2 minutes left in the half and looked like they were going to score to maintain that kind of 2-possession lead. And, you know, when you play, again, like I'm going to talk about this a few times, but like the Steelers play on like one plane when you look at the field, and it's like from 0 to 5 yards basically. So the safeties creep up, the linebackers stay where they are, the corners jump routes, and linemen, even when they're rushing, jump and they get their hands into passing lanes. So you're very limited about where you can put the ball, and it's just you got to be very precise. And Ben wasn't, and a guy named, I believe, Tavon Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
nicely jumped a route. Just made a really nice play and ran back 50 yards for a touchdown. And now a game that the Steelers kind of were like, they weren't dominating, but they were like handling it. The defense was playing really well.
Yeah.
I think
They were
Josh
up
Allen had
2-0 in the turnover battle. Like, yeah.
Josh Allen had thrown for like 40 yards. Like, they were cruising, in Steeler fashion, up by 4. Like, now they're losing. Their defense hasn't given up a touchdown, and they're losing. They're down 10-7, and or 7. No, 9. I guess they
9. They
missed
missed the
point.
extra point.
Yeah, and then they go into halftime, and the Bills make some really nice adjustments to the Steelers blitz game, and the Bills come out and they have a really nice drive. And I'm going to see if I note any. Yeah, just like really nice continuation on going to Diggs. The field was a little bit slippery, so there are a couple times that Steelers DBs like slipped and fell, and the Bills had some big catch and runs. And then all of a sudden it's 16-7. And that, again, we always talk about it, especially if you're talking about the Patriots, that end of first half to second half changeover. If you can get 2 scoring drives in that period, like, you can change the whole complexity of a game. And that's exactly what happened. And it wasn't even with 2 drives. it was a pick six, for God's sake. Um, and then after that, they stopped guarding Diggs. They went to zone. So we've talked about zone not for a little while, but zone, when the Steelers play it, is 20 free yards. So they started doing that, and Diggs looked just wide open. Like, he just looked wide open on their next drive, and that's when they scored their final touchdown. I think he had 40 yards in 2 consecutive plays. And then, yeah, that was 23-7. And the Steelers still didn't look like they could play offense. So it was basically over. And yet, I'm still saying, like, this is a game the Steelers, like, they were very competitive in. They ended up having a nice drive, and making it 23-15. And you're still like, you know. But too little, too late. The Bills were definitely the better team. I'm not gonna like try and say the Steelers were better. I just think they were competitive and maybe better for part of the game until they lost then. And all the stuff I just said was basically the end of the first half through like partway through the third quarter. Um, it just like really fell apart. And the defense was just on the field for the whole second half. So if you're thinking, wow, the Steelers defense really didn't look good in the second half, it's because the offense ran, and this is according to Steelers Depot, like 19 plays in the whole second half. They just weren't on the field. So, you factor that, you factor in some more injuries. It was a little bit of a nightmare there. So they lost.
Yeah. Any thoughts on kind of the last couple weeks, like disappearance of Claypool?
Yeah, Tomlin commented on it. He's getting less snaps. Um, I think it's to preserve him. It's a long season. The rookie wall exists for these guys. They're just playing him less, but he's still getting like some of the similar targets. He had one where, that he was so close to high pointing this ball, and I almost brought it up last week that I was getting a little nervous because sometimes he's really good at high pointing the ball, but sometimes he's so big that he jumps up and he tries to cradle it, and you can be 6'9" in the NFL, and you still got to get your hands over your head. Like, they'll take that ball away. So I think that's why he gets so many pass interferences and isn't catching the ball. He's not bringing it down. But he made a really good effort to high point a ball that Ben just overthrew in the first half. He's around. It's tough with him because Ben's not throwing a very accurate deep ball right now. He's not getting as many snaps. You got to have James Washington in the game because he's going to freaking ball. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of the guys that's actually sure-handed right now. So that's the theory, is that they're trying to preserve him for the stretch run, and they're just trying to manage keeping his energy up and stuff. But yeah, you'd like to see him, be involved somehow. They only really use him in that pre-snap jet motion. They haven't been using Ray. And I've made a discovery because I keep getting excited about it. They only do it on the first drive. It's only part of their scripted plays. And then they just abandon it. It happened again this game. They ran it in the first drive, which was a 3-and-out, and then you never saw it again. Am I angry? Yes. Come on. You know the plays. You've been doing it all freaking year. You can make an excuse when Pouncey wasn't in, that they didn't have the timing with their backup center. Fine. He's back. Like, we need to do something here. Scripted plays. The Steelers haven't scored a touchdown their first drive in like 20 years. Like, you need to be doing things well beyond this. Like, you kidding me? God dang. There's so much. I don't know when you want me to freak out about the Steelers offense, but it's a problem.
We'll just let this foreplay continue for another week and kind of see what happens.
It's a mess, man. It's just a mess. But hopefully they figure out a way to. They were giving Claypool some of the shorter targets on some slants and stuff, and he was doing pretty well with them. He didn't really have a problem with drops, so hopefully they'll kind of mix him in. But like you said, they're not sustaining drives, so when you only run 19 plays in a second half, it doesn't look like anybody's on the field. Nobody really is getting chances. So it was a bummer. There was what else was notable? There was There was one good drive, and I wanted to highlight it because already started complaining about the offense. The drive that the Steelers made it 23-15. Deontay came back into the game. He caught some short passes, did some nice stuff after the catch. Nothing crazy, no 40 yards or anything like that, but just converting some first downs before they even got to third down, just moving the chains, like doing some really nice stuff. And then really, really nice play call by one Randy Fiechner. They run a fake bubble screen where Eric Ebron is on the line, outside of the right of the line, and then they have the slot receiver. They both break outside like they're going to block, and I think Deontay Johnson is on top of the screen, and he steps back like he's going to catch the wide receiver screen. Eric Ebron then cuts up into the seam, and Ben Roethlisberger just turns, and then he throws that seam route. It's a 17-yard gain, right? And it's not a deep throw. He didn't have to throw it 40 yards, but he changed it. He changed that plane so that now you're covering more than a piece of paper's width of the field. I don't think it takes Ben Roethlisberger having to uncork 65-yard passes. Like,
Yeah.
it only takes a little bit of depth for this offense to be back, like, cruising again. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, and the pick six even, like teams have been doing things like this to Marcus Peters, setting him up,
yeah,
and like if that plays a double move, that guy's way out of position
hmm
and toast.
yeah. And I'm a little nervous about the offensive line right now. The run game is a nightmare, and it's not just because of James Conner or Benny Snell or anyone. Like, there's people in the backfield all the time. It's like really problematic. And the other time that you see it, and this was a big debate in our chat or whatever. Ben Roethlisberger threw a late interception when they were driving, and James Washington got way open, like touchdown, 70-yard touchdown open, with a single high safety that Ben successfully looked off. I actually went back and watched the coaches footage on some of these plays. The safety started on the opposite hash mark, which is pretty far away. And then Ben looked to the left, and the safety took like multiple steps away from James Washington. Ben turned and threw it like immediately, but there was a guy in his face. So he didn't step into that throw. So there's been speculation that Ben's knee is hurt, all this, whatever. Here's the deal. He threw the ball 45 yards in the air off his back foot, and it wasn't far enough. If to you that means that he's done, he's washed up, that's fine. It was a pretty long throw. It definitely wasn't long enough. Like, James Washington was wide open. Like, you got to find a way to hit it. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe there isn't a way. Maybe if he had stepped up, then James Washington's too far down the field and he can no longer get it there. All I know is that you get very few opportunities to hit those type of deep balls. And like, he was wide open. Like, this was a touchdown. Like, they were down by 11, so it doesn't change the game. I'm not saying the Steelers win if he hits this play, but it's a type of play again that changes the type of defenses that are called, because single high safety means that everyone was near the line of scrimmage, so you can't run your bread and butter stuff, which was working when the defenses weren't only playing against it. So, an unfortunate play both to watch in real time and to examine as far as the implications to the offense. The offensive line needs to step up, because I don't think Ben's arm strength is a problem. He's been zinging them this year. It's the strongest his arm has looked to me in a while. Maybe
No,
ever.
I think the protection of Ben in this system, people talk about the, if you want to talk about the Steelers protecting Ben, it's not protecting a, hiding a flaw in his arm. I think it's more keeping him from taking all the hits.
Yeah.
That's been the big problem. He takes a zillion hits and extends the plays, and so
Yeah, so the Steelers lost 26-15. They dropped to 11-2 after starting 11-0. They are officially a playoff team this year for the first time in 3 years. And I think at this point it's fair to be a little nervous. But you've got 3 weeks left. We'll talk about it coming back around. But I think there's reason for hope. And It's okay to feel two things at once. It's okay to be very disappointed. We talked about this game as a fork in the road type of game, a real opportunity to have a nice performance against a playoff caliber team, and they didn't. Especially the offense. I think the defense did show some things, particularly without any of their inside linebackers at all, which is notable. But not enough. Should we get to the real bread and butter of this podcast today? Maybe the game of the year. Maybe the game
We
of the
might as
century.
well.
Maybe
we'll move on to what people are calling the Florida Man Dookie Shuffle, the Cleveland Steamer, the Mud Bowl Miracle, the Monday Night Cramper, the Big Brown Hollywood Touchdown, the huge dump off to Hollywood, fourth down touch Brown.
Did you write any of these yourself?
Nope. Spider 2 Ply Banana. These were all replies to Garrett Downing, who works in social media for the Baltimore Ravens, asking people to name the fourth down play to Hollywood Brown, who, despite every effort to lose the nickname, especially the last couple weeks, always finds some way to hang on by a thread.
I'm not giving him a nickname for standing around while two Browns players ran into each other. I'm not giving him any nickname for that.
So we'll go back to hit some points from early in this game. Basically, the Ravens moved the ball at will all game when Lamar was in. It was very 2019 Ravens offense. There was one point where Lamar had taken more sacks than he had completions in the first half. And the Browns' offense was a little more hit or miss. They were very sporadic, but they were showing signs of what happened last week in Tennessee and the same kind of trouble that the Ravens had against Tennessee, they had against the Browns. But we'll get to basically towards the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. So it was a 34-20 game. And at this point, the Ravens had lost Jimmy Smith to another groin injury, which I can't remember the last time Jimmy Smith finished a game. But that's besides the point. Somewhere in this sequence, Marcus Peters also got hurt and never came back in the game. And props to the Browns, Baker. Thoughts and prayers to Devontae Harris, I think that's his name. Stefanski and Baker really zeroed in on him and picked on him, mostly with Rashard Higgins. But a majority of the second half, the Browns just moved the ball at will, which ended up possibly even being a fatal flaw. But they got Kareem Hunt involved in the passing game on the edge. We'll talk about a big moment. I'm sure Chad will love to talk about a big moment with Kareem Hunt soon. But in this sequence, this sandwich of really dominant Cleveland scoring drives, Lamar mysteriously leaves the game. And sideline reporters talk about he went to the locker room. They don't know why. They talked to Harbaugh. Harbaugh said it's not a big deal. And no sooner than I'm talking to Chad about Trace McSorley isn't warming up. So we're all good. Lamar's going to be there. The Browns score and kick it off. And what do you know? Here comes Trace McSorley strapping the helmet on. And so the Ravens go 3 and out because a ball literally goes through Marquise Brown on third down. And so it was 34-28, which is a new analytics wrinkle weird thing. The Browns were down 14 points, but went for two anyways on the first touchdown. And there's been a lot of talk about when you know you're going to need a 2-point conversion, doing it the first time. But it's all about like avoiding overtime and all that stuff. And, which they converted because they pretty much did whatever the fuck they wanted on offense at the end of the game.
Fun conversion too. Kareem Hunt finally dropped a pass, maybe for the first time in his life, and it bounced behind him, and Donovan Peoples-Jones dives and just snatches it off the ground right before it hits.
Unbelievable, dude. Fucking unbelievable.
Yeah, that was after the touchdown, which was on 4th down. I think it's the play Peters might have got hurt on because he fell down.
He just fell down. Yeah. So 3 and out. Browns get the ball back. Score again. It's 35-34. And Trace kind of gets the short passing game going a little bit. They start to run the ball a little more effectively. He's run some option stuff. They didn't really change the defense. It's just, or the offense. He was on Part of My Take today, which I guess they even interviewed after the Monday Night Football game. And he said that, like, the offense doesn't change. I mean, he's an athletic guy. He can run the option. It's just losing the most dynamic player in the NFL, maybe only rivaled by Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I mean, you could see
changes what you do.
It changed the capability of the offense in a like,
and the Bills just
fashion.
Came right up into the box like immediately. There was no fear of the passing game. He makes a big 3rd down completion to Willie Snead to extend a drive, which if that play doesn't, that might be the biggest play of the game for the Ravens. If that play doesn't happen, they punt before Lamar comes back. And I mean, the Browns almost certainly drive down and make it an 8-point game. But they convert, and then the next series of downs goes to 3rd and 2. Trace McSorley takes a sack, or maybe it was an option play. Gets tackled for a loss. But his knee kind of buckled, and he goes down into the fetal position for a 3-yard loss. 4th and 5. And just like a fucking Disney movie, Lamar Jackson comes trotting out of the tunnel. Equipment guy hands him a helmet. He comes onto the field for 4th and 5. They call a passing play. Lamar leaves the pocket towards the right. It looks like he could probably run for the 1st down. And instead, he kind of chucks it crossbody, floats it into the middle of the field, where Marquise Brown is behind everybody in the Browns secondary, and takes it in for the touchdown. And that really changed the whole game. So the Ravens run a 2-point conversion after that to make it a 7-point game, 42-35.
Wait.
Go
All
ahead.
you ever do is talk about Sendejo. So can you please describe the 2-point conversion for our audience?
What was that? Did he deliver the big hit on Dobbins?
Well, who delivered the hit?
Well, yeah. There was a large collision between J.K. Dobbins and Andrew Sendejo on kind of some sweep action. And Sendejo took the brunt of it because it happened on the 1-yard line, and J.K. Dobbins ended up standing in the end zone. So,
dude, I think he's in concussion protocol right now too. He just got sent to the cleaners, man. And I know that you love talking about Sendejo, so we needed to just take.
Also, I need to address. Dean says that Marquise Brown was underthrown on that play. Lamar Jackson was running to the right and threw it across his body towards the middle of the field. That's almost always an ill-advised pass, and it's almost always underthrown. I don't care. Nobody in the league makes that throw consistently, leading a receiver.
Yeah, and
So
also like
shove it, Dean.
when the guy you're throwing to had two people defending him and they ran into each other, you gotta throw it wherever you want. So who cares? Like,
Yeah, result
Frank,
touchdown. Eat
if
it, Dean.
if this is about anything, it's about the Browns' coverage flopping so massively that it didn't matter. Like, quarterbacks see that. He threw it when the two Cleveland defenders converged on themselves. Like, it was a debacle of the highest order.
Yeah,
No
and
one on this podcast is going to publicly argue that Lamar was particularly accurate this game. So he threw it
and
where it could be caught.
Roddy makes a good point. The objective there was to get the first down. The touchdown was icing on the cake, and
Or
you
was
know
it?
what?
Or was it? Because
I'm just
what happened?
thankful. I'm just
What
thankful
happened?
Marquise caught it.
He scored with 64 seconds. So was it icing on the cake, Joey? Because what happened with
Well, the
64
Browns
seconds?
scored with 64 seconds left.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. So there was like 2 minutes left in the game then, because it
Yep.
took like 70 seconds. So Marquise Brown scores on a terribly thrown ball, miraculous or devastating. Because what do the Browns do?
The Browns go down the field on like 7 plays in 44 seconds.
Without calling a timeout.
Yep.
They had 3
More
timeouts. Didn't
more
use any.
picking on Devontae Harris to get down the field. However, the scoring play, the Ravens were playing the most unbelievably soft zone after, because they just couldn't play man anymore. Like, it wasn't working. It was very clear that they were just going to throw the ball to whoever Harris was covering. And so the Ravens are playing off in a zone, and they get it to Kareem Hunt in the flat, who gave like a very, very small, like, shoulder fake. And Marlon Humphrey was playing the short zone, went towards the sideline side for the fake, and Kareem just turned it in upfield, left Marlon just standing there. It was kind of reminiscent of Earl Thomas giving up on the play, because like when you see the highlights, Marlon's like standing there with his hands on his hips before Kareem even gets in the end zone. And the Browns score a touchdown with 1 minute and 4 seconds left.
Almost tragic. They didn't even call a timeout on this drive, and a lot of this was Kareem Hunt. He had crazy yards after the catch, and to me, and I'm not gonna go crazy like dissing Marlon Humphrey. He's like one of the best corners in the NFL. But
Yeah.
this is the cost of Marlon Humphrey. He makes like a lot of spectacular plays because he is physical enough he has a physical advantage enough against most receivers that he can take those risks and still like get the guy down or slow him down enough that the rest of the defense converges. But I'd say like once every 6 games, Marlon makes a tackle that looks so pathetic you almost wonder what was even happening, because it didn't even really look like an honest to goodness like strip attempt. It was just like a very bad arm tackle. It was like an Andrew Sandejo tackle. And the best excuse that I can give comes from the Film Study podcast on Baltimore, and they say that when Baltimore runs a zone, they will often, if they know they have help over the top, take an angle on the tackle that they believe directs the runner at the help. And so I believe his name's Ken McCusick. He said that Marlon took the outside because he thought, I think, Chris Board would be to the inside, but he wasn't. So after the play, you see Marvin extending his arms out, like, where were you? And Chris Board wasn't there. So whose fault was it? I don't know. Like, Kareem Hunt is really strong, so you can't do silly things to bring him down. Marlon Humphrey didn't get the job done that play.
Yep.
Browns score with a minute left, almost on accident. And then, is that a blessing or is it a curse?
Because then the Ravens get the ball back, and So ESPN had the field goal target line at like the 40, which is just pretty absurd.
Is it?
But
Is
that's
it?
just how Justin Tucker, by typical kicking standards, it's pretty absurd.
Yeah. For the
But
Steelers, it would be the 30,
by
maybe
Justin
32.
Tucker standards, it's not so absurd. And the Ravens really only had to move the ball like 40-ish yards. And for everybody that wants to talk about Lamar can't throw it when the defense knows he has to throw it, he did. I think he had like 5 straight completions on the drive. Andrews a bunch.
It was like 4 straight shallow crossing routes. If he can't hit those, he is honest to goodness a running back. Like,
Completed passes into field goal range. Like I can't believe we're continuing to do this to Lamar Jackson. Any other quarterback in the league, when if they lead a drive into field goal territory with a minute left to win a game, it's like, oh my god, he's so clutch. So fuck everybody. All right. When he had to, Lamar Jackson moved the chains with his arm. And even if everybody knows it's going to Andrews, he still completed passes to Andrews. Like, that's all that matters.
yeah, to me, this is like a huge indictment on the Browns linebackers and maybe secondary because, I mean, it was like 3 of the same play in a row.
Yes.
And it maybe was even 4, and 3 of them were crossing routes going the same direction from the same spot on the field before the 4th one started on the left side and
They
was a
weren't even
crossing route.
calling like new plays. They were rushing to the
No.
line and then just not spiking it and running more short pass plays. Like,
Yeah, it was just crossing routes. It was like 4-yard crossing routes. It when you make fun of what Ben Roethlisberger is doing this year, I think they actually maybe got the wrong playbook on that drive, running the Steelers playbook. Like it was hilarious. And hey, as far as I'm concerned, my official opinion is that the Ravens as an organization should be celebrated for building an offense around the player. That's what good coaches do, right? We always talk about it. Do you force players into your scheme or do you build around the players? And they were open. Like Mark Andrews was open on those 3 plays in a row. The Browns did a pretty good job on Andrews most of the night. They did not on that drive, and he threw it to the open man 4 times in a row. Got him to the 40, which, like you said, for most teams, maybe it was a 38. You know, you did a pretty good job on defense to like not give them a gimme. Justin Tucker comes out, makes a 55-yard field goal look like a 42-yard field goal, and the Browns lose yet again
yep.
to the
But
Ravens.
not before some pitchy woo woo on the last play. The Browns took a safety after
Yeah,
some very extended pitchy woo woo, and so the Ravens
right.
also
That's
covered. Good teams
right.
win, great teams cover. That's all. I mean,
I hope that in your mind the Ravens get credit for that. I hope that you really just believe that in your heart. That's all Ravens right there.
also worth noting, Cody Parkey missed a field goal and an extra point in this game, and if the Browns go into they're almost assuredly, pending like an epic collapse, the Browns are going to make the playoffs this year. If they go to the playoffs with Cody Parkey on their roster, they get they deserve everything they're going to get.
Yeah, it will be the official word of this podcast that we need to A, get many, many more listeners. So B, we can save their money if they're thinking about betting on the Browns. Because if they take Cody Parkey to the playoffs, it's over. It is over. Eh,
Also, I don't know how many of these were credited on uh, that last play with all the pitches, but the Browns fumbled 7 times in this game and recovered all of them. So
Dude, I'm sure at least 4 of those were on the last play.
there were like 3 in the first half, and the Browns recovered all of them. Higgins had one or two, Landry had one. Like, balls were getting punched out everywhere,
I
and the
might have
Browns were
written that down
recovering,
actually.
or the balls were rolling out of bounds. So they were also getting very lucky.
Yeah, they did get fairly lucky in the first half. They started slow. Baker wasn't particularly accurate in the first half with his throws either. He definitely warmed up, and it certainly helped, like you said, that the Ravens lost two of their corners, um, which, as good as the Ravens' corners are, not very many teams' sixth corner is worth much of anything. So
Yeah.
that's the way that is for everybody. Did you have any larger takeaways about the teams from this game, which was just super entertaining? If any of you listeners watch games after the fact, like on Game Pass or anything, or you see it on NFL, watch the game. Tons of
Yeah.
scoring, tons of fun, tons of weirdness. We didn't even really cover a lot of it. We didn't talk about any of the scoring in the first half up to this point. Like, it was a really, really just fun, exciting game.
Yeah, they tied the record for most rushing touchdowns in a game. I think they might have even ended up breaking the record, but at one point there was 9 rushing touchdowns in the game,
I think that's how it finished. Yeah.
and like both the other times 9 rushing touchdowns happened were in 1922. So,
Yeah.
but I kind of talked last week about like I felt like both offenses were gonna move the ball, and they did. I think takeaways, big picture takeaways, the Browns are good. For some reason, Baker Mayfield is significantly better when Odell Beckham is not on the field. Like, the rapport he has with Higgins is fantastic. It's criminal how little playing time he's gotten in the last year and a half. And Baker just like plays more free. I don't know. Like, what they do when Odell is out is what they should do when he's in, which is like 2 wide receivers and a tight end and 2 running backs, or 2 tight ends and a running back. Like, run the same shit. And but their defense is so bad. And Myles Garrett left this game towards the end. I don't know what the word is on him. It didn't look like a super serious injury. He took like an helmet to the elbow. But that's something to keep an eye on. Denzel Ward wasn't in this game, so those
He
guys
practiced
help.
today.
Those guys
Yeah.
help their defense for sure. But unless they get into like a shootout and Baker really gets rolling, I don't think they're a legit threat to like Kansas City. If you want to, I mean, people this week want to put Buffalo in like the AFC elites conversation, but really Kansas City's up there by themselves, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd agree. Beating the Steelers as they're currently playing, I mean, it's fine, but it's not like you beat a team that was firing on all cylinders. Like,
Yeah. And it wasn't incredibly impressive. Like, the first half, they just kind of like bumbled their way into a lead on
yeah,
accident.
and yeah, I'm not gonna relitigate against myself on that travesty, but
But
I agree. The Chiefs are the standout. So here's a couple things that I think are interesting about these two teams that really came to light today. One, the Ravens reestablished the identity that at least we on this podcast suspected that they had all along, which was the driving force of this entire offense is the threat of Lamar running the ball. So that means read option, and that means extended plays in the passing game where you know the pocket breaks down, maybe the defenders just aren't sure where to defend. If they come up to Lamar, he drops a big pass. If they don't, he has the option to run. And if you look at the Ravens scoring drives, of which there were many, they were almost all like significantly propelled by one or multiple explosive Lamar runs. Um, either in the read option game or off broken pass plays. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Cleveland never figured it out. Like, at no point in this game did they have any conceptualization of what to do with their defenders, which is so disappointing because we know Baker is a listener of this podcast. So he knows because we've been talking about it. You usher Lamar out of bounds. So the key to rushing Lamar is discipline with the interior. You have to push the pocket and force him out of the middle. All of his touchdown runs this year, the long ones, he jets right up the middle, and no one can converge on him successfully. He can go anywhere. But if you just usher him to the sideline, he'll take what he can get. He'll jog out without getting hurt. Smart. They just couldn't do it. Like, they just couldn't do it at all at any point. It was maybe one of the worst efforts at defending him in the running game I've ever seen, maybe since Cincinnati last year.
Especially this season.
Like, yeah, because he hasn't been as good because teams get it. Like, work him inside out and he'll just kind of coast.
Yeah.
And instead of a 40-yard gain, it's 6.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be almost opposite convention with him. Like, typically, with a running quarterback, you want to keep contain. But having those ends come up the field and keep contain just opens everything up.
Yeah,
And so you want, and it neuters the pass rush on the edges, but I mean, it's worth it because even if your guys get home on the edges, there's a pretty high chance Lamar is just going to make them look like children anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you can let your edges run outside, but you have to supplement it by creating gaps on the inside that are filled by middle linebackers. You have to have a lot of talent and cohesion in the rush for it to work. And for the record, the Browns did do it a few times. They did a really excellent stunt. People, pause. Okay, come back. I'm going to say something nice about Myles Garrett. They had a sequence where they had 2 sacks in a row. One was Olivier Vernon coming around the edge and just turning the corner really well, and Lamar held the ball for a long time. Great sack. Next play, the Browns ran a really nice stunt where Myles Garrett took a selfless roll and he crashed inside from the outside, took a double team, and Sheldon Richardson looped around, but he was able to take a tight corner because the line, it was condensed because the 2 players crashed on Myles, and sacked Lamar for a nice quick sack. Really nice play design and a great work by Myles Garrett to absorb those 2 blocks. So it can be done, and the Browns did do it, but in a lot of time, so they just weren't as disciplined, and then the overall effect was that even though they got some sacks on Lamar early, they didn't play disciplined enough to have any sort of effective result. But I don't want to just trash on the Browns. The Browns bamboozled the Ravens almost equally effectively, and I've got a couple reasons why. They use a different sort of misdirection, and it starts with their play action, right? They're able to make passing downs look like running downs. The offensive line is amazing, not just in their brute force, but in their deception and making things look different than what they are. And Baker, I think, deserves a lot of credit for this too. If you watch a lot of running plays, Baker will hand the ball off and he'll loop around like he does on some of their big gain play action plays. Baker really works hard to sell the play action, and I think I haven't heard him get a ton of credit for it, at least this year. I think he deserves a ton of credit for it. I think he's really helping create that misdirection, and I don't think the Ravens really ever had an answer for it because the Browns they have a cohesive offensive plan, and it's very difficult, even if you have a good defensive plan, to just understand what's happening unless you have a big lead and you know what they have to do in order to win. And the Ravens, only at 1 point early in the second half, looked like they might, and they just couldn't hold that one drive that they needed to.
Yeah, and I think big picture for the Ravens, if it was nice to see Lamar kind of like flip the switch to 2019 Lamar. We haven't really seen him take over a game running like that this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to see the continued dedication to the running game the way they have.
Yeah, you got to. Ingram
Mark,
played one snap. That was probably smart.
yep, it was a flea flicker first play of the game. Fun times. Ended
Give him
up
the
in
start.
a bunch of nothing special.
Give him the start out of respect and get out of
But
here.
yeah, I mean, Dobbins slowly getting more of the load, I think, is definitely the answer. He's fantastic. Gus Edwards, awesome. Lamar, great. Uh, the secondary's got to get and stay healthy if the Ravens are going to make any kind of run. But having Lamar there, like, you can, every time they've lost, like, the big close games, it's kind of been like just almost everything seems to break wrong for the Ravens. The conversions and things like that, they just, whether Lamar's pressing or whatever it is, like that's what seems to go wrong. And but when things go right, like they don't even need everything to go right. Like Lamar's good enough where if a couple things go right, like they can still be a scary team to play in the playoffs. So
Yeah, maybe.
we'll
I
see.
mean, we'll see. The Ravens' offense was a far cry this year, leading up to this game from last year, and the Browns. Like we knew that the matchup was not favorable for the
Yeah,
Browns to do this. So all the credit in the world for the Ravens for recognizing it and doing it. Um, they don't have a very strong schedule to close out, so I expect the Ravens to play good offensive football for the rest of the season. And if they don't, I think there's reason to have a
yeah.
little worry that they could regress back into this and that they don't can like realize it's their identity and that they think it's just like a one game plan. We'll see. We'll see what they do. I do want to say one more nice thing about Baker because he is a listener. He deserves it. He got robbed of AFC Offensive Player of the Week last week and maybe this week. Like Lamar got it. He might not have even been the best quarterback in this game. Like Baker Mayfield had a crazy game. We already talked about the fakes. I'd also like to address Baker Mayfield's pocket presence. The Ravens brought all sorts of funny business, and Baker, you might have noticed if you watch this game, not doing a lot of getting flushed to the right, not a lot of panicking. He had a lot of nice stepping up into the pain, into that pocket, into the enclosed space where all the big people are trying to hurt you, keeping his eyes upfield and delivering nice passes. Now look, Baker Mayfield isn't making 17 reads. He's making one, maybe two if you're lucky. But he'll step up and he'll wait for that read to develop, and he won't put his eyes on it the whole time either like an amateur. He'll look away and then come to that first read when it's time to do it. So I really, really liked, even though it wasn't perfect, and we didn't even talk about Tyus Bowser's sweet, sweet, sweet interception. I'm not even totally mad at Baker Mayfield for that. Tyus Bowser had a really, really nice play in that coverage. But look, Baker Mayfield is not the best quarterback in the NFL, just like Ben Roethlisberger isn't. Like on his best day, thinks he can put the ball anywhere, and he might put it into some risky places. So I think this was Baker's best day, and he threw a pick, almost six, and I'm not even fretting it. That's just life with Baker. He was stepping up in the pocket. He was making good decisions. He's a high effort guy. I think Browns fans should be excited right now about this offense, man. This is a fun team to watch, and they're gonna make the playoffs. And in case you're not good at math, they're not gonna win the division. So sorry. I know you think they might,
Yeah, that's out the window. Yeah,
but they're not.
yeah. The Steelers have to lose out, basically. So
Yeah. So should we move on to next week?
let us move to next week. Um, we have next week starts tomorrow. We even have some Saturday football. which, if you're interested in the playoff picture, Buffalo plays on Saturday. It's against Denver, so they should win. But then we kick off at 1 o'clock back in Charm City, where the Ravens host the Jacksonville Jaguars. Doug Marrone said that they would need an Olympic sprinter to properly replicate Lamar Jackson on the practice squad, and they don't have one. So that's where the Jaguars are starting from a strategy standpoint. And in all reality, they probably, deep in their heart of hearts, don't want to win this game because they're fighting for possible number one draft pick if the Jets can ever win. So Baltimore's favored by 13 points, which I think is fair. In the Lamar Jackson era, they really have crushed the teams that they're supposed to beat. And the ferocity of the run game tends to do that. You know, the run, they're so good at running the ball that even when the game plan gets conservative and they're trying to run the clock out, they end up scoring a shit ton of points and jamming the ball down your throat. So I would expect lots of this. Gardner Minshew is going to play. So
Minshew mania.
Yeah, I mean, they've been playing pretty well offensively, the Jags, with Glennon. And so Minshew being in there, like, depending on how the injury report shakes out for the Baltimore secondary, wouldn't be surprised to see, you know, some pretty good passing game come out of Gardner Minshew. I think DJ Chark's going to play, so there could be some problems with that. But I mean, the Jags just, I don't think they have it, and the Ravens are playing for something. The Jags are basically playing for nothing. So
here's the deal. I don't think anyone can make the case that this is like an even game.
Well, no.
But when it's not, you have to make sure that you respect the players that are even matchups. Gardner Minshew is not an even matchup. Minshew mania is a very infrequent occurrence, kind of like Northern Lights in the United States, continental United States. It happens, but at this point, it's mostly, you know, reputation. It's a story. It doesn't happen often. So I'm not thinking that that's a big deal, but you do have to just, part of you is like, man, I hope this isn't that like one game where he just like goes off and then it's like Mark Minshew mania for the next like 6 weeks while he sucks.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. James Robinson is actually pretty good. If Calais Campbell isn't 100% yet, if, you know, the Ravens aren't minding their P's and Q's, Jacksonville will be totally happy to play a slug it out game. Like, they're giving this dude 15 to 25 carries a game, and he's making it. Like, he's making use of those carries. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Brandon Williams needs to have a good game. Patrick Queen needs to be filling the right gaps. Whoever that other guy is in the given moment, either Phillips or who's usually the other inside linebacker when they even use two. They don't even usually use two inside linebackers very often.
Fort.
Yeah, Fort. So he's smart, so fill the right gaps. Hopefully Calais is healthy, because that's a big deal. And if he gets going at all, Jacksonville has like a deep roster of wide receivers. DJ Chark is awesome, but you have to figure that Marlon Humphrey can take him away. But Keelan Cole is like tall and tricky, and he can make plays. And then they have this rookie, Laviska Shenault, who they've given a couple runs to again now that he's healthy, and they'll use him in tricky ways. And if all of a sudden you got Harris or whoever guarding him, and they're giving him handoffs, and they're doing funny business, like, he could have, 75 key yards that make this game competitive when maybe it shouldn't be. So
Yeah.
the offense could pose problems. I don't expect it to, but there is a world in which it happens.
Yeah.
And unlike the Browns, I like Jacksonville's middle linebackers. Joe Schobert, probably not going to the Pro Bowl this year, but he knows what it's like to play Lamar. And Miles Jack is a good athlete. So I think if they watch their tape, they will see that they need to usher Lamar to the sidelines. No getting caught up in the wash. No funny business with blitzing. See where he is. Guide him to the sideline. You don't have to be faster. Give him the six. Give him the six. You might give up a few first downs that way, but it will eventually encourage him to just throw the ball, because once he gets outside like that, he doesn't really want to run. He's looking up the field and he's kind of gliding, and he's just going to go out of bounds. So I think they can do that. I'm a little worried about the rest of Jacksonville's defense. I don't know how the D line. I don't think they are going to do much. I wouldn't be concerned about them if I were you. And I mean, the secondary doesn't blow my skirt up, but frankly, Lamar doesn't take advantage of that kind of stuff that much anyway. So I don't really know what to say about that. So I'll be interested. I'll be following the middle linebackers for Jacksonville. If they start jumping the play action and getting caught near the line of scrimmage, you can expect Lamar to have another 80 to 1,000 yards rushing in this game, and also the other running backs, and if they're disciplined and Jacksonville's defensive line does a good job of keeping Ravens' offensive line off those middle linebackers, they might be able to stick around.
Alrighty. The rest of our division games are in prime time this week. Yeah. Cleveland, somehow, I understand why Cleveland's in prime time, somehow with the Giants. In week 15, we're still not flexing the Giants out of prime time. I know they're in a playoff hunt, but they're 5-8. There's a lot of hype around the Giants right now. 2 weeks ago, they beat Seattle. I think their defense is fine. Cleveland's going to win this game. Cleveland has something to play for. They're figuring out their offensive identity. And really, the Seahawks offense hasn't played well in like a month plus.
Except for this past week when they won 40-3 over.
Oh, that was the Jets, right?
Yeah. But I mean, they did it. They did do it.
Yes, it happened.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of excited about this game. A big part of what the Giants have done successfully to remain competitive is that their defense has played really nicely. And if we remember our game against the Steelers in week 1, we way underestimated the quality of the Giants' defensive front. They've got 3 big old Berthas that even Cleveland's offensive line will have trouble moving. And their names are Dexter Lawrence, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Leonard Williams. You've heard those names a couple times now, especially in the podcast after the Steelers beat the Giants, when I was like, dang, I didn't realize those guys were all so good. So Cleveland does some really good stuff with their offensive line, although Wyatt Teller, their highest PFF graded offensive lineman, is missing practice today with an ankle, so hopefully he's back, so we get the best version of the Browns offensive line versus this Giants defensive line. I think the key here, let me make sure I remember his name. Yeah, Blake Martinez. His number is 54. He's a middle linebacker. He has 118 tackles right now. So if you finish a season with that many, you're super great, and there's still 3 games left. So basically, the Giants are hoping that those 3 big guys can keep Blake Martinez having a great eyeball on who's got the ball and where they're going. And if he misses the tackles, the Giants are in big trouble. So watch number 54. Get your eyes right in the middle of that field and see what he's doing, and see if he's doing a good job of discerning what the play calls are and actually making the tackles. One person tackling Chubb is usually tough to ask, but if there's a guy that can do it, it might be Blake with a big hole to look through, because those defensive linemen are absorbing so many blocks. So actually, I'm excited about the challenge that this team offers Cleveland's running offense.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to There's a 9-4 team against a 5-8 team, and the spread's like 4 points. So we'll see. Other than Saquon, the Giants are as healthy as they've been
Not
for a
exactly.
while.
Daniel Jones is probably not playing.
Oh, he's back out.
But Colt McCoy is the one that was starting when they beat Seattle.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's true. Freaking wild time.
yeah, so
Um,
in that game, Wayne Gallman ran for 135 yards on 16 carries.
he's been good.
Colt McCoy threw for like 108 yards. And it wasn't like a Lamar Jackson game where he threw for 108 yards and ran for a million. That's all he did. So,
Yeah,
um, so
that
it's
game was like
hard.
15-8 or something. Like,
Yes, yeah, it
yeah,
was 17-12. It was very
there
low
you go.
scoring. Um, but dude, if Miles Garrett doesn't play, the Giants have receivers. They've got Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate, who are both guys that run nice routes and can do some good stuff after the catch. They have Darius Slayton, who's super fast,
I
and
like
if
him
you're
a lot.
willing, you can throw over the top. And the Browns might not even have their bad free safety. They might have to use their worst free safety, Sheldrick Redwine, if he's even considered that. I think he usually plays strong safety. Um, if Andrew Sendejo doesn't get cleared of this concussion. So you'd love to see them try to throw deep on this defense, especially on the other side of the field from when Denzel Ward is, because he should be back. He practiced today. Um, and today is Wednesday. This podcast will be out on tomorrow, which is Thursday, which is today when you're listening to it, or maybe yesterday if you listen to it later. And Evan Ingram, tight end. Browns can't cover tight ends. We covered it. Even if they for most of the game, they'll stop doing it when it's time that they have to do it, as we just talked about with the Ravens. So Evan Ingram's really good, and that's going to be a big problem. But Colt, pressure's on you, Colt. You're going to have to deliver some nice passes, because even a bad NFL defense is still an NFL defense. I think Cleveland has a big advantage in this game, but it's not so big that I'm not intrigued to watch it.
Yeah, and this is another one of these prove you're not prove you're not the same old Browns.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a game you should win. You are a good team. You are you are a playoff caliber team in a pretty damn competitive AFC, and like this is a game you need to win. Like, yeah, you're on a short week and you had a gut-wrenching loss to a division rival. But if there's any moral victories to be had in a loss against a team that you've only beat like twice in the last 11 meetings, like you proved you belong like at the top of this division, and
Yeah.
you need to build some momentum for week 17.
And hey, we talked about this like weeks and weeks ago, right? The Browns were 4-2. All they needed to do for the rest of the year was beat teams that at the time had 2 wins or less. They've done that and more. They beat the
Yeah.
Titans. So now they're on pace to be 11-5, but this is one of the games that they were supposed to win. So let's see if they can handle it. Browns, pressure's on. Are you guys winners, or are you guys the current iteration of the Steelers? Oh, speaking of the Steelers.
Yeah, Monday Night Football. Steelers Bengals.
What a great matchup.
Remember when like the Bengals were supposed to be like supplanting the Ravens as the Steelers' big rival for like 2 games?
Yeah, it lasted about a year.
That
They
was
had the
fun.
Montez Perfect thing and all that. And it was for all the wrong reasons. Like the Ravens Steelers
It was
rivalry, it's like it's physical and it's mean, but like the Bengals Steelers rivalry was like street fighty.
dirty.
It
Yeah.
was misdemeanory. It wasn't right.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because the Bengals haven't had a lot of really good teams, and I don't even want to say that as a disrespect term. They had a lot of players that weren't necessarily bad characters. They were just kind of caught up in that stuff, and so it kind of paints what was a really fun little stretch for those two teams in a pretty negative light. Um, but Monday was supposed to be fun because Joe Burrow was going to have had almost a whole season playing football, and he was going to be playing against the big bad Steelers for the second time. And I think we are all looking forward to that. But
Yeah.
now instead, we just have a big old dud ski. We've got maybe the worst team in the NFL, or if you're some of our listeners, just not quite the worst, if you want to be accurate. Um,
If you value that.
if you want to be accurate in terms of records, which we spend most of our time trying to get beyond talking just about that. That's okay. And the Steelers are playing well worse than their record right now. And they have like really kind of serious problems with injuries. Vince Williams is not going to come off COVID list in time. And he's like the Steelers' only like middle linebacker left that started the season as one. So Avery Williamson will start, who they signed like 3 weeks ago and is apparently now the guy playing all the time. And then they have Marcus Allen, who is like a safety who has like barely made the team the last 3 years, and now he's playing middle linebacker. So it's okay to be
Sick.
nervous about that. It's okay to be a little nervous about that whole situation. And also, we didn't even talk about this in the Steelers Bills, but if you're thinking, man, how come the Steelers can't ever run the ball? Well, part of last week was because they started the game with 8 offensive linemen, and they spent a fair portion of it with only 5. They like their backup center is playing left guard. Like it's just a mess. So they lost their starting left guard. He's on IR now, Matt Filer. Kevin Dotson, who we love because he played awesome against Alabama, and we're going to bring that up as often as possible until he retires and goes to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Um, he also got hurt then playing left guard, and he might play this week. But if he doesn't, we got a guy named J.D. Hassenhauer, and he stinks. Like, that's all there is to it, people. He's not good. He's not good at center, which is his position, backup center. He's not good at left guard either. Um, and apparently, Okorafor, who's been starting as our right tackle, he got hurt and came back into the game, but he's questionable still too. So we're talking about some serious, not awesome situations for the Steelers' offensive line. But you know what? You just got to get through it. It's the Bengals. So here's what I want to see out of the Steelers this week. I don't care about the short passing game because it works. But people need to catch the ball. So we need to change the level of the offense to have some depth. And you can do that in 3 ways that I came up with really fast. 1, you can throw deep passes on the sideline. You could throw deep sideline passes for touchdowns. We already know James Washington and Chase Claypool get open, so you can just you can do that, and you can sink those safeties back, and you can free up those lanes for that short passing game, which is your bread and butter. You don't have to freak out. That's a good bread and butter. We don't have to run away from that. That's our bread and butter. We love that. 2, we can have a running game. We just talked about why that's going to be hard. James Conner also might not play. He hurt his quad last week, so there are reasons to believe the Steelers will not establish a running game this week. That doesn't mean it's not an option, people. If they get that going, that is a way to change the depth, because now you got to bring people up, and then you free those short passing lanes because everybody's crashing for the running game. So that's good. That's a good thing. But if you're thinking, Chad, how could I ever do this stuff? Ben Roethlisberger's old. He's washed up. He can't throw the deep ball. And James Conner stinks. And all he was ever good for was surviving cancer, which is a big deal, but it's not a big deal now when I'm talking about winning football games. What am I going to do? People, the intermediate passing game. We saw it this past week with the Eric Ebron play when they faked the bubble screen. You can create space without having to throw the ball 60 yards. I've even wrote down a few routes. You got the seam routes like Eric Ebron just ran. You've got the back shoulder stuff. You can act like you're going deep and throw like a 15-yarder where the receiver just kind of slows down, does that. Antonio Brown was great at it. So you know Ben Roethlisberger loves throwing it. And you can throw deep outs. Ben Roethlisberger loves throwing to the sideline. He's still got the arm strength. You fake the slant. You know Ben Roethlisberger loves a good pump fake. He loves a good pump fake. And you throw the deep out. So there's choices. You don't have to throw the ball a million yards. That's important. Got to see that out of the offense. Whew. And if we don't, oh boy. Oh boy. Because Cincinnati's not good. They're just not good. So even if the Steelers don't score a million points, they need to be moving the ball. They need to be doing this stuff. They're capable of doing it. They are capable people. We've seen it happen. They scored 26 or more points 10 games in a row. It's the franchise best they've ever done. That was this year. So it's very much something that's within the realm of possibility. The defense just needs to survive. We just need health. Joe Hayden's been out. Vince Williams is out with the stuff. Stevie Nelson was hurt. Terrell Edmonds is questionable. He's our strong safety. We just need health. We just need to get through this game healthy. I would also like to see Alex Highsmith build a little confidence. He hasn't really been getting after the quarterback super successfully. He did make a really nice goal line run stop on the Bills that led to a goal line stand that led to a field goal, so he's playing. He's doing good things. You don't have to be mad at him. Don't be mad at him, Steeler Nation. We just want to see his confidence get up. We're just, this is the Bengals. Their offensive line is, not good. Let's dust off some of our best pass rush moves and give Ryan Finley something to write to his mom about in tears tonight, And the last thing I'd like to see is steady play from Avery Williamson and Marcus Allen. I want to come into the podcast next week and not even bring them up, because all they did was fill their gap responsibilities and tackle the running back for between 1 and 3 yard gains. I don't even want to be able to figure out who it is. I don't know who was that just made that tackle. Doesn't matter. Good job. And we move on. That's all I need. Don't have to be splash plays. Doesn't have to be crazy. Just do your assignments and don't miss big tackles. And we're great. We're great. And I think we get out of this game with a win and we start to be building something towards the last 2 weeks of the season where we can maybe play a playoff team and look like we're also a playoff team.
That's the dream.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. This has been such a good season. We got to get to the playoffs and represent ourselves well, I don't know what's going to happen. We might lose in the first round. God knows it's happened before. Tim Tebow, Blake Bortles. It's happened. We've lived through it, Steeler Nation. We've felt the pain. They can't hurt us any more than they already have. But what they can do, they can make us feel good, right? This has been a really fun year. 11-0. It's never happened. This has been fun. All we got to do, and it doesn't matter, right? I didn't even say this. If the Steelers win this week, that's the division. That's it. We've won the AFC North. We weren't supposed to win the AFC North. We were supposed to be the feisty competitor that sort of made the Ravens think twice before they won the Super Bowl or lost to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Now we are one win against Ryan Finley and Zach Taylor and Brian Anarumo, or whatever the defensive coordinator's name is. Lou. This is to take it. We're gonna win. We're already in the playoffs. We're gonna win the division. Now we just got to play great football. So let's take a step in the right direction this week. That was my pep talk. Are you ready for some good Steeler football?
If you're not going to get it this week, you might not see it again this year.
Yeah.
This is the week to do it. All right. Also, I would like to mention our Pick'em League. It's a little late in the year. I have no delusions that you're going to join it, even though it would be fun if you did, because every week gets scored individually. And last week was kind of a bloodbath. One of our hosts picked 13 games right. And it's been pretty tight week to week, but the next closest was 11 games. And I've now supplanted our good friend Bones for first place overall on the season, which means I've also leapfrogged you. So order has been restored.
Temporarily.
Order has been restored in the
But did you
pick'em
score
pool.
the go-ahead touchdown too soon, Joey?
That's what
Did
we'll
you give
find out.
too
Yeah.
much time?
So join the pick'em if you find it on our page. If you go to our page and just search like pick'em, you'll see the post. Um, it's fun. It's a good time, and it's pretty competitive every week. So join it, have some fun. You got nothing to lose and everything to gain in
Mhm.
fun and rooting interest.
Yeah,
It's the
and
closest
there's
you can
usually
get
some fun links. You'll see
to
some
sports
fun links.
gambling without risking your money.
True that. And you could gain internet fame.
That's right. Alrighty. Everybody have a super duper week. Enjoy Thursday night football tomorrow. Raiders Chargers might be a good game because nobody really knows what to expect from either of those teams. And Saturday football, Sunday football, Monday football. We've got football. Who knows when we're going to get football? We get football all the time now.
Guess what, team? There's probably going to be Tuesday football too, because that's just the way things have been going lately.
Maybe Tuesday afternoon at 5:15.
Yeah, maybe Wednesday. Maybe
Yeah.
it'll be scheduled as both, and we'll just see how it develops as it goes on.
We'll
But
play the
who's
first
always
half on Tuesday, second half on Wednesday.
That's right. But we're always on time. You know where to find us
Mm,
Thursdays, unless Joey gets COVID because he's irresponsible.
that's right. We'll do some contact tracing, figure out, see if we can narrow down the source.
I like it.
Have a good week, everybody.